November Consumer Price Index numbers are out. Inflation is up 0.1%, not flat as expected, at 3.1% for the year. I'm Tom Rigotti, and this is Fox News.
Welcome to the Eight Oaks Recovery Hour. Eight Oaks is a men's Christian-based alcohol and drug recovery center. And at this time, we offer a 30 to 90-day program. And my name is Mike Tyree, and I'm the pastoral counselor at Eight Oaks. I teach sessions every day out there with the guys. And with me today is Brandon Keeton again, and he is a former addict who, by the grace of God, has turned his life around and is now a local business owner. He's on the board of our Eight Oaks Recovery Center and has become a leader of our community. And if you need any help while we're talking today, if you're a family member or you're an addict yourself and you need some help, call 1-800-576-4396, 1-800-576-4396. Well, with Brandon today is his dad, Steve Keeton. Steve is a longtime resident of Lawrence County, and he's retired from teaching. He's coached for many years, and he owns Keto's Antiques in Etheridge. And then, if it was up to me, there would be probably a part of me that we could go talk shop, because I've been doing antiques for many years myself, and every time we get together, we like to talk antiques. But today, we're on a different topic, and it's about families who have addicts in their families. We want to know what the dynamics of that is, especially here during the holidays coming up. What is that like? And Brandon, why don't you just get us started by just introducing your dad and tell us what it was like growing up in the Keeton family.
My name is Brandon Keeton. To give you a little backstory about me, I grew up in an amazing home with an amazing dad, an amazing mom, and an amazing sister. I couldn't ask for a better life, a better childhood. I was the poster kid who had everything he ever wanted and dreamed for. You know, Dad provided great, and I had an amazing childhood. I was raised right. I was forced to go to church whether I wanted to go to church or not. You know, I knew right from wrong, but eventually I chose to walk away from it on my own, knowing what I knew, knowing where I should have went, where I should be going. I chose to go everywhere I shouldn't be going and doing everything I shouldn't be doing. You know, and through my addiction and all the crazy years, my dad and my mom never left my side. My sister, my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles, all of them never quit praying for me, never left me. And it's a huge part of the reason why I have been saved and set free and redeemed and living the life I am today. But growing up, like I said, we had everything we could ever hope for and dream of. We had the awesome house and the awesome neighbors and great community to be grown up in, and me and the Haygoods and the Pals and the Blackwoods and all great families, you know, all great influences. Nothing. It's just eventually I chose to walk away from everything that was covering me and protecting me, and chose the world. And so that spiraled into about a 10, 12-year addiction, alcoholism, a whole bunch of DUIs all over the country, and alcoholism turned into opiate addiction turned into heroin turned into meth, and I was a needle junkie for the last 3 years of my addiction. I was just a waste of a dude. I was 130 pounds, soaking wet. I could not make or form sentences, or my whole brain was just depleted, basically. Nothing I said made sense. Nothing I did was common sense was out of the question by that point. I was lost. Brandon was no longer with us, you know. And I told the story last time about me breaking into Mom's room, and at the very end of my addiction, breaking into Mom's room. Dad, you were gone on a trip somewhere, or Memphis or something. And if you know me and you know my personality, I'm extremely chill and laid back. Don't raise my voice hardly ever unless it's something to get really excited about. But I'm not easily worked up. I don't really get very excited, you know. But that night, I don't remember this, but Mom said I came in there just raising Cain, you know, demanding that I had money, and it scared her to death. And she's just throwing every piece of money she could find just to get me out of the house. And, you know, that night she calls Dad and she's like, we got to do something. This kid's, he's got to get out of here. We don't want him to be homeless, but he can't be here no more. He can't. And I wasn't staying there at the end of my addiction. I was coming in at 2 o'clock in the morning and leaving at 5. I was just trying to avoid everybody at all costs, you know. But that was right at Thanksgiving, right at the end of Thanksgiving. And so remember the story about all my cousins and, just leaving there wondering what was wrong with me, what's up. I mean, my aunts and uncles having to have the hard conversation of, we just don't think Brandon's going to be with us much longer. We don't think Brandon's going to make it to the next Thanksgiving or Christmas, probably not even then either, And
So to our listeners, I mean, this is very pertinent to them and holiday season. This is what the climax of all this. This is when it was hitting right at the holiday season. It's not like this had been going on. It had been going on for a while, but it really hit the max at the holiday season.
Yeah. And so December the 7th, 2017, it's been 6 years this last week.
Mm-hmm.
I got arrested, and it was an answer to a prayer from my mom and dad because they didn't know what to do. That was the next day, right?
Well, she called that morning.
That
Called the morning that he got arrested and said, "Steve, something's got to go." Said Brandon's he's got to find somewhere else to go, because at that point he was starting to scare her a little. And it wasn't like, up until that point, it was kind of like, if she had $60, on her in cash, he might want 40, but it got to the point where the $60, he wanted all of it. He wanted everything. So his demeanor and everything had changed to a little more hostile, a little more like, I've got to have money. I've got to have
aggressive.
This. Yeah, got a little more aggressive. And so it was tough. But that was the day where she said that. And, we prayed. I prayed about it. And, and also, looking back, you can think, because I know at that point Brandon was also, he was, he was searching too. He knew something had to change also. And, I mean, we talked later on, and he had said, I was at the point where either God had to help me or I wasn't going to be around.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't going to be alive to see much more, because he was just at that point where he knew something had to change. And so he was searching for help, inside. And we definitely were too. We just didn't know sometimes which way to turn or where to go to. But yeah, that all happened right around Thanksgiving. And he said that about it. I just remember my nephew, a couple of my nephews and my niece and all, and after Brandon had kind of went out, and they're like, what is going on? What's up here? Because he didn't make complete sentences. He would talk about certain numbers that meant this and all that, and it was just, it was just sad to look back and just think, wow, just what has happened here. And, and as a parent, you feel helpless. I mean, you just feel like, what can I do, or what, there's just no way to turn, so that's kind of where we had gotten to toward the end there. And
well, that's the thing that I want the listeners to really understand is, what did you feel at those moments? You said helpless. Can you dive into that a little bit more, that emotion, Steve?
Yeah, I think so. And it was funny. I mean, Mallory, Brandon's older sister, raising them up, we raised them the same, and we were always in church, and they were always involved in church. And, looking back, there were signs that probably we saw that we thought, well, maybe this is not a big deal or anything. But at that point, talking about kind of how we felt, we had just, we had prayed and we had talked about, but it got to the point where, okay, something's going on bad. And when we realized that, that's when at first, there was the drinking. And then it kind of got a different kind of, his attitude and everything kind of changed, demeanor changed. And I can start with the drinking, because that's kind of where we started. And there was so many times where he would come home and just didn't even know where he was. Or we had times where he would come home and he had just, his vehicle would look like he had gone through a demolition derby. That's how he had it was beat up, looked like maybe it rolled, and there wasn't a smooth area on it. And for him to even make it home was a miracle in itself. But, for us, we just felt hopeless, because we would talk to him and we would say, hey, let's get help. But, he wasn't ready for help. He just kind of kept spiraling down. And I remember also that, it's so hard because once you get to a point and you get involved in some drugs, we started seeing when we knew it was extremely bad is when we started kind of seeing, maybe like a syringe around or something like that. We found I've never done drugs, never drank in my life or anything, and so it was a new, and I didn't understand. I didn't know and didn't know what to do, who to talk to, and I think most parents, and I, maybe I'm different, but I think most parents, for us, we put on the front that everything was okay around our friends. Most of our friends and all that, church people, they didn't even know that there was a problem. We could put on pretty much a pretty good face when we were out, but inside, we were dying inside, just trying to, first of all, wonder why, and then second of all, wonder what we can do to help him.
Did you blame yourself?
I did, in a sense, because like I said, Mallory and Brandon, we raised them the same, and I'd always think back and think, should we have done something different with Brandon? Mallory never got involved in the drinking or the drugs or anything like that, but Brandon just took a different direction, and I always felt like, okay, we should have been a lot tougher on Brandon than what we were because, we raised him the same, but it didn't have the same outcome.
My sister was older, so they expected me to do the same thing Mallory did with the freedom that Mallory was given. But, I was tricking you anyways. It's not like you knew for the longest time, and by the time that happened, it was already too late. It's because I misused their trust. Because
what were some
Mallory
of the...
never did... I don't know if she's ever done anything wrong. She's the angel.
And then there's Brandon.
But even looking from me now being a father and looking at my kids, like we know we have addictive personalities, and there's no way around that. Me and my dad are both ADD. There's no way around that. My whole entire family hyper focuses on stuff. We're all business owners. We're all entrepreneurs. My sister in Memphis owns multiple businesses, and we're constantly pushing. And if you know my dad, that's how he's always done. He's always provided. He was a school teacher, hustling signs and shirts on the side, dealing like he was always pushing. Well, so me, I guess that empty void is kind of what my brain wonders. It does this, it does that. So if we're not producing, like it's easy for us to fall into an addiction or to get lost or whatever. Me now knowing who I am and knowing how to focus that stuff, like it does me a whole lot of good. I am hyperactive, extremely hyperactive, but it makes me one heck of a business owner when I know how to channel it, when I know how to work it. So, I think as time goes on, we understand this, and as me and Mallory are growing up, it's like this is a definite trait of our family, and it's going to be passed on from, I think it allows me to, and Dad grew up with an alcoholic father, and so he knew that I will never do this, I will never do that. He saw the most horrible examples of this, and so I was just protected, and I never saw any of it. So when the kids tell me at school, oh, drinking's this, drinking's that, like you just, I never saw anything bad from it, where Dad saw the worst of the worst. Yeah, and he told me those stories, but you know what I mean?
For me,
they were just stories.
I would tell Brandon about my dad because, things were going great in our family, and all of a sudden my dad started drinking, and my dad was the greatest guy when he wasn't drinking. But when he drank, he became violent. For whatever reason, he would become violent. And, there was times when, I could hear the truck revving up, and I would grab my little sister and run because I knew he was coming in. He would come around, and he'd come toward the picnic table where we were, and he would just run through the picnic table. So I would grab her, and I would run off, and I'd had to take guns away from him and all. And I knew early on, I guess for me too, what Brandon said about addictive personality, I saw in my dad how he became addicted to alcohol, and I made that decision that that's something I would never do. I would never drink, so I've never had a drink. Never smoked, so I felt like, hey, this is what I've done, this is what you need to do, Brandon, but it didn't turn out like that.
Right.
So, but it was
Dad's ignorance to addiction. So Mom and Dad would always tell me, like, just quit. It was that simple. Dad would just quit. Like,
I'd always thought willpower. You could do anything you want to, but I soon learned as Brandon progressed into other things, and this was on the pills. He got it pills at one point, and I would just tell him, I said, Brandon, you just quit. And he said, okay, Dad, I'm going to. And this was, far along when he had progressed to where he was in bad shape. I mean, we knew we were in trouble as a family, and, it was killing us inside because we would try to help him and just, okay, we're going to do rehab. And I can do it on my own, but I remember probably 3 different times where Brandon decided that he was going to beat it himself. And it was a real learning curve for me because soon I realized that it wasn't that he was doing it to get high. He was doing it to survive. I mean, it came to a point where he had to have those pills to survive. He couldn't, he went one time, I remember we went, and it was like 10 days, and he hadn't had anything, and we thought, man, we're going to whip this, and go in there the next morning, and he couldn't even get out of bed. He hadn't had anything in like 10 days, and his joints, and I mean, nothing worked. So we finally realized that once they get to a certain point, they're not doing this to get high. He's trying so hard to come off of it, but he's just doing it to survive at that point.
Boy, that is a profound statement. You weren't doing that to get high; you were doing that to survive, and that really kind of sums it up.
At the end of your
he could not
addiction,
function. He couldn't function.
At the end of your opiate addiction, it doesn't matter how much Roxy's or Opanas or anything that you take. You're not getting high. You're just not in pain.
Right.
Your dopamine receptors and all that being burnt out, like your whole entire body is just in excruciating pain.
Yeah, he was in so much pain just laying there in bed, and we'd just be crying and thinking, gosh, how can we help him? But we thought, well, okay, we got to get through this. And I got to be honest with you, I mean, this is really bad, but when it came to that point where we realized, okay, he is not doing this to get high, he's doing this to survive, we bought drugs for him. I mean, we had to do that just to try to get it to where he could get out of bed, or he could
just to get me to the next doctor, or to
get him just get him help. So we had to do that because he had agreed, okay, if I can't do this and I'm going to go to rehab or whatever, and we're like, okay, we're going to help you get to that point, but it's just, man, it's tough times. Our whole family, and it's just it's hard looking back.
Now, when you do look back, what you had mentioned that when things got bad and you saw the needles. When you look back on it now, Steve, were there signs? Were there things that you can see now that you didn't really pay attention to, really didn't notice? That now looking back on it, it was like, oh yeah, I know why he was doing this, or when I saw this, these were some signs that were leading up to it that you really didn't recognize at the time.
Yeah, for him, for Brandon, I mean, it started out, we knew there was a problem when he started drinking quite a bit. I mean, we tried to help him and trying to get him help, and with other places, and just
Well, coming from a church background, coming from a religious background, I mean, you didn't drink at all.
Never. Mm-mm.
Okay, so just to him to drink had to have been a sign in itself.
Oh, it was, and it was hard for me to handle that. It was just something I didn't approve of, and but I mean, I got to be honest with you, most of Brandon's friends around, and it would just seem like the norm that that's just what kids did, and you start finding out about different parents and talking, and I mean, our kid drinks, and it was just, and I'm like, wow, it was an eye opener for me, and but that was the first. Then it just kept progressing. The alcohol. I remember one night he was. I think at this point it was probably alcohol, and it may have been something else mixed with alcohol. But it's pretty unbelievable how many sleepless nights we had, just wondering if, as a parent, it was a horrifying thing to be 10, 11 o'clock at night and Brandon not be home and get a phone call. Because we would always think, me and Mel would look at each other and we would think, is this the call? It was that bad to where we thought, is this the call where they're going to call and say, hey, we found your son, and, in this or that kind of position. And so it was so bad. But I remember this one night where I had been out searching for him for a couple hours and just couldn't find him. Finally, I kept calling and calling and calling, and got up to about 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and Mel started calling, and we're trying to just find him. And he called finally, and he could not complete a sentence. He couldn't tell us where he was. He couldn't tell us anything, but he would just, just kind of like that. Mm. And we're like, oh my goodness. Our first thought is he's going to kill himself, or he's going to kill somebody else, or whatever. And so we actually got in a vehicle, and we drove around Lawrenceburg till probably 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, just driving the roads, trying to find him. Wow. And never found him. And then we got back home and couldn't sleep. I mean, we couldn't go to bed. You just, you worry that much about your kid. Are they going to be okay? And we were just scared to death that we were going to get a phone call at any time, and because we knew it wouldn't. He couldn't even say a word. He couldn't drive, and obviously he was on the road somewhere, or we didn't know where he was. And finally, we got a call. I guess it was about 8 or 8:30, and he called enough to where we could understand where he's talking about. And I'm like, Brandon, just tell me. Earlier we had tried that, and he couldn't even complete a few words to even tell us anything about his surroundings. And so he said, yeah, I'm here. It's in a parking lot, and so he could tell us he was in a parking lot. And so we're already getting our stuff and getting in the vehicle, to go somewhere. And finally he looked around enough, and he said, oh, there's a sign here. And he was in a church parking lot out in New Prospect. And it took us, all night long. I mean, just hunting him and searching for him. And that's just and I know there's other parents that just are scared to death every time their son or daughter or whatever is doing something like that, because it's just something that kind of hits you inside your core. I mean, just knowing that you're going to get a call any time, and that, this is going to be it. And so, it was tough. We had some times where, I just remember, how sometimes you can get that call, and when your heart just falls, and, like the first DUI, we're like, man, we've got to get help. We've got to do this and that. And then it was like the last one. He was working in North Dakota when he got one. I guess that was the last one, but no, that was the third one. So we got that when we were at some friend's house. For that. Yeah, we were at some friend's house that night, and got the call from North Dakota, and then he had gotten a DUI there, and we're just like, I mean, it's just a feeling that, I can't wish that upon any parent at all, because it's the most horrifying feeling. I mean,
what makes that one so much worse is because everybody thought I hadn't drank in a year. Everybody thought I was sober. I was and then lo and behold, here I am still behind everybody's back. And I hadn't been drinking hardly at all. That's what's crazy. And that's how God was literally like shaking me, trying to get me to wake up that this is a real deal and to quit. But instead I dove deeper, which makes no sense.
Yeah. Were the nights hard?
Oh, wow. You just couldn't imagine. For Mel and me both. I mean, and like I said, we tried to put on a happy face for people out in the community when we're out, because we're social people and we're out there a lot. But we were really hurting inside, and nights were tough. We had a lot of sleepless nights. If he wasn't home, then we were worried sick. And I got to tell you, for several years, the best sleep we got was when he was picked up and when he was in jail.
He was in jail.
I'll get to that part of the
I get that.
So what's crazy is, fast forward 6 years, and Christmas is coming up, and I've got my beautiful wife, my beautiful boys, a beautiful home, 2 of them, 2 mortgages right now if anybody wants to buy a hat. No, I'm kidding. But life is so different, because 6 years ago, and I remember being so mad at them, and Dad kept telling me my bail was extremely high. I was looking at a whole bunch of charges, and Dad's like, someone just can't afford it. I'm like, dude, it's Christmas. Get me out of this jail cell right now. And then I'd flip, and Brandon would come back and be like, I know I deserve everything. I need to be in jail. This is where I need to be. Mm-hmm. And then the next call, Dad, get me out of here right this second. I need to come home. So 6 years ago, I had Christmas over a computer screen with my family telling me hi. It's just that I needed that, and Dad, I'm proud of you for keeping me in there. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just let them sit in jail for a minute.
Yeah, we had that advice was from Brett Cooper, and so. And Brandon, I mean, I guess I could tell about the rehab out in Texas. Have we got time for me to do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, Brandon had gone to rehab the day they arrested Brandon. He was in Leoma, and that's the day where everything, we knew something had to change drastically and fast. And that's the day they arrested him, and he was in jail. And Brent Cooper had advised us, hey, you got to leave him in there. And so we did. And so at the end of that point, he could go to a rehab out in Texas. And so he goes out there, and I think that's where his life turned around, because when he was out there, I think he really, you know, you can only go up when you're at the bottom. Excuse me, but he was out there, supposed to have been a year program, and they kind of worked through, and at the end, they, you know, they're working, learning how to make money and stuff. Well, Brandon's never had a problem working. I mean, he's always been a really good worker, and, you know, and so he was out there 2 months, and they had already moved him to kind of the end of the cycle because he worked well. They had him in a factory driving a tow motor, and
They figured out I could make money. So.
doing all this work. And so he would do that, come home like, I think you're working, wouldn't it, second shift, come home at 2 o'clock?
Yeah, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I wouldn't get to go to church no more. I wouldn't get to go to classes no more. And like I did not need to know how to work. I needed my Lord. I needed
Yeah,
to develop a relationship with Jesus. And so
Now, this is after you were trying to change.
yes, I mean I was trying my very best to live for God in every single thing I could do. I mean, I was begging God to see like Him, speak like Him, move like Him, walk like Him, talk like Him, everything. It was just, I don't know what clicked whenever I got in jail. I mean, I started walking around reading the Bible. I remembered all these things that my dad and my old pastors and my youth ministers had spoke over me, and things that were promised to me as long as I obeyed and walked how I was supposed to. And I just fell back in love with God. I started to develop my own relationship. You know, at the very beginning of my life, I had a very good knowledge of who God was. I saw it in my parents' life. I saw it going to church. I had a very good understanding of the Bible. I could memorize tons of Bible verses. You know, probably knew more of them back then than I do now. But in jail, it started to develop my own relationship with God. Out of desperation, desperately needing my Savior. Desperately, I was ridden with Crohn's disease. You know, I could hardly move, hardly walk. I had anxiety, depression. I was fed pills half my life, trying to fix this, trying to fix that. You know, what's wrong with me? It was just a lack of the Holy Spirit. I needed to be healed and set free. And I don't know when that happened, but there's some point in time in jail to where Brandon gave up all control and chased after God above all else. And, you know, I was telling my dad this, and it was hard for. He's like, son, I don't know. Like, I want to believe you. I want to trust you, but you've told me lies after lies after lies. You've told me exactly what you wanted to tell me to get me to do exactly what you want me to do, and I just don't feel like this time's different. So being there after 2 months, and they working me to death, and so.
Yeah, when we went out there, he called. He'd been there 2 months, and he called me, got a call kind of real late at night. And I said, hey, Brandon, because, you know, at that point, I don't think they were supposed to call. And he said, I need you to come and get me, Dad. I said, what do you mean come get you? And he said, God has told me to walk away from this program. And I'm like, Brandon, you can't walk away from this program. I mean, you're going to go to prison or whatever if you don't continue this. And at that point, little did we know, they wouldn't let him back in because he had walked away. But he, you know, and he's telling us that I've changed, you know. But like Brandon said, we had heard that so many times. I'm doing this and I'm doing good and all that. And you know, all that was not true. So it took us about 2 weeks to be able to arrange everything to go get him. And during that time we got there, he was taking people to rehab.
I was staying in a homeless shelter, taking people. I actually got to take a dude that took my spot since they wouldn't let me back in. I got to take this young man to the rehab. He took my spot. And
y'all walked like what?
Yeah, it's 13, 14 miles. I stayed in contact with that kid for a while. I need to get back in touch with him, but he did good. And
so when we went there anyway, we came back, got back home. And right off the bat, he wanted to go, you know, there was things he wanted to do. He wanted to join Kiwanis. He wanted to, I mean, I could tell he was driven. Now, he still had some things he talked about, and we thought, okay, he's not well. He's not well, yeah, what's he talking about? But, you know, he wanted to be a part of ADOX. He wanted to see what it was all about. And he was, And the one thing, when we got back, I called Brent Cooper and told him what happened. He was like, "Oh no, Steve." And so I'm like, "Yep, that's." So it went on for 6 months. We didn't hear anything, and by this time he was already involved in so many things. And finally got a call, and so we went in and we talked to Brent. Had to take a lawyer in, and I guess what was the most impressive to me that I didn't even know about it until that day, but Brandon saw the 2 police officers that had arrested him out on a call, and he went up to them and shook their hand and said, "Hey, I want to thank y'all for arresting me because I feel like y'all have saved my life."
Wow.
And when he told
I was
them
still
that-
looking at 18 years in prison.
Yeah, you were.
So that was just, and, when he says that, still makes chills run over me for him to have gone up and know that there comes a point where you've got to make a change and you're not blaming everybody else, because I think that's, as a parent, having someone doing that, I mean, it's never their fault or whatever, usually they're placing the blame on somebody else or whatever, but man, I'm just thankful today that, and I've got to say this, I know there's a lot of parents out there, but for us, we've come out on the other end, I mean, in a good way. Like Brandon's talking about his business, and now he's got a family and 2 great grandsons. I mean, that we have that are just precious and stuff. And the, to see him now and where he was, and I have to be honest with you, we're at a point now where I thought 10 years ago would have never, ever been possible. I mean, our thought was, who would ever take Brandon in the state that he's in or how he is? And Mel and I talked about that a lot and just thinking, I mean, there's no future for him because of how bad and how deep he was. So there is hope. I mean, there's hope. I think people have to know that. But I think, sometimes we have to turn to God for that hope and trust and to be able to move past that.
Well, in the 12-step program, that third step is surrender. And I think, that as the addict has got to surrender, and that's, in surrendering, it includes trust in God. And I think the family has got to adapt that third step into their life as much as the addict has to the family of the addict, to the point that you can only do what you can do.
Oh, yeah.
And the rest of it, you just got to turn over to God and trust that somehow, some way, that God is going to get through to them, and that somebody's going to come around and say something that will trigger. For you, it was the jail, and that, for many folks that is. And by the way, if you do need help, we are available at 8 Oaks at 800-576-4396, 800-576-4396. Steve, what was Christmas itself like, that Christmas morning when you would get up? Is Brandon there? Is Brandon not there?
Yeah, there for several years we didn't know. I mean, he would usually come. He would usually be there for the Christmas and Thanksgiving and all, but that last Thanksgiving was so hard just because he was so
gone.
I mean, he was just gone. I mean, he couldn't complete sentences. He couldn't, and the family knew then that there was a major, major problem. And then that Christmas, we spent Christmas with him in jail. And as a parent, that was so hard.
That Christmas, that Thanksgiving when that happened.
That Thanksgiving that it happened, and then by Christmas he was actually in jail. So we got to, I guess, what you'd say, talk to him over the
box.
The box,
yeah.
What they call it. But Brandon would kind of go through there. He's like, "You got to get me out. You got to get me out." And then next time he'd say, "No, I know this is the best thing." But then he would just plead and beg. I mean, you got a lot of time to think in there, but we're so thankful that we left him there, and I think that's what has to happen with so many parents.
Absolutely.
They want to say, I've got to get them out. I can't leave them in there. But for us, that was the best thing that
and sometimes
happened.
Mom and Dad tried very hard to help me and to get us. I mean, they're doing their very best to help me, that I don't get in trouble, that this doesn't stay with me for the rest of my life. But I mean, it also just makes me wonder sometimes. Like now, if my son ever does something, I'm gonna call the cop and just have him take him to jail. Like we just gonna get it out the way, you know. 6 years later, I'm thankful for jail. I'm thankful for that box. I'm thankful I had to spend Christmas with my family over a daggum computer screen. I'm thankful for all that because it taught me a whole lot. It was some hard lessons. It's stuff I wish I didn't have to go that far to learn, but it's stuff that I needed to learn. It's some struggle I had to go through. You get what I'm saying?
No, absolutely.
So a lot of times I feel like, and you bailed me out because you love me and you want the very best for me, and I could say all the right things at all the right times. That's what an addict does, you know. I can poke my dad. I can hurt him. I can make him feel like a horrible father because he's lit. You know what I'm saying? But eventually, that you just gotta leave them in there. They're not gonna get hurt. Ain't nobody gonna stab them in jail. Lawrence County Jail's like a Holiday Inn. That place is super nice. I've been in some bad ones and that ain't it. I'm just like, it'll be okay. It might do them a lot of good to spend 30, 40, 50, 60. I don't know. Yeah. It might do them a whole lot of good. And looking back, I am thankful for that. I am thankful that my dad left me in there. I am thankful for the justice system. I'm thankful for the cops that arrested me. I'm thankful for the job that they do. I'm thankful for all that because it literally has helped me become the man I am today.
And see, where he is now is where so many people that are addicts don't get to.
They never get there.
They don't get to that point to where they're thankful. They want to blame people and say, if
they
they hadn't done this, I wouldn't have been in jail. Or that, you know, and they're not looking at the big picture. I mean, you know, they're where, you know, if they get God involved and help, and then they're going to be thankful for those things because it's made them a better person.
I just thought about something, Pops. So in every rehab you go to, every self-help program you go to, they always ask you about, like, what was the moment? Where was it? Like, looking back, what did it? What changed? What was the reason? Why are you so far here? Why? How did this happen? Like, looking back on my life, I know where I feel like something changed, but can you remember, or does something stand out to where, like, I remember after this, something was just...
All right, what do you, I mean, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Like, there's a moment in time to where the little innocent Brandon, something happened. Like, there's usually an event or...
Where I knew that, you were better? Or
No. When it first started, younger, 13, 14.
Oh. No, I mean, I can't think of anything that early on, but I think in, you know, probably 16, 17, 18, that area, I felt like.
Okay, 16, 17, and when did you start using?
I don't know.
Around that time, or was it before?
I probably started drinking a little after. And I drank some, but not really drinking, like once in a blue moon. I can't really remember when I started. I started dipping.
Yeah.
Which I went to Summertown. That's like a dadgummit.
It seems like things just, you know, start with one thing and it just keeps progressing to something else.
Right.
And it's like Brandon said, I knew early on that my dad addicted to alcohol. I knew I had an addictive personality. I mean, you know, for me, it's antiques and all that is what I've always, you know. And so, but I think for that, I think around that time when he was driving up, might have been 18, somewhere right in there, I felt like it's when I knew that, I just felt like his personality and changed. Now, when you went on the medicine that time.
That's my whole thing right there. I didn't know if that's...
Yeah, he
and I was around 14 then.
Yeah, he went on and we went to this doctor and she said, oh, he's got big boy acne. We got to put him on Accutane. And so we said, oh, you know, us being parents just said, oh, okay, yeah.
But they put it out as a miracle drug. It fixes this, it fixes that. Don't never have acne again, blah, blah, blah. It's just, you had to sign a waiver just in case you committed suicide, that you couldn't sue him, all sorts of stuff.
And I know people that have done this and have turned
Red
out,
flag.
Yeah.
that have turned out fine. But for Brandon, it was if I had one thing to take back over all of the time, that would be it, that we would never put him on that because, I mean, his joints swelled, and
I never knew what depression was as a kid until that medicine. And I truly think something with that stuff like...
And I think that's definitely when his whole
outlook on life,
everything changed. Was that, and you know, and I know people that's taken it, and it's been
awesome,
great for them. But I mean, I think you just got to know early, okay, but from that point on, I'm like Brandon, I think from that point on, I went out just to watch him in basketball practice, and he looked like a 85-year-old man trying to get around. He couldn't hardly move, his joints swelled. I mean, it just was something that I wish he had never done. And I think that might have been where, he faced some depression from that and that. So, and I hate to blame that on that, but that's where I saw a difference in him.
I'm sure it was a collective of things, but I vividly remember thinking, what is this feeling? What is going on? And I had thoughts of suicide. I ain't never thought about what is this? I'm a spoiled brat. I ain't you know what I'm saying? It was just I was having thoughts, things I've never dealt with. It was a weird thing. They took it off the market 15 times. It wasn't a good. They take it off and rebrand
I think it's still
call it
on
something
there.
else.
But for me, I guess if I had to say something for parents out there, because for us, we hung in there and we tried to help Brandon every way, any which way we could. I mean, financially and all, we could do that. I mean, so that was. And I have to say to parents that not everybody could do that. I mean, I don't know. Parents are going to know what I'm talking about, but if you ever get in the court system
Golly.
with DUIs or whatever, it costs a fortune. And then you got to go back here and you got to go here and you got to do this. And it is so expensive. And I wish there was something that could happen, but a lot of people can't get out of that. They have no, I mean, it's just, they don't have maybe a parent like Mel and I were to fall back on and say, hey, we're going to help you any way we can, or we're going to get you the help you need or whatever. And so I feel like it would be hard for a lot of parents, but I think the hope is to know that some, like Brandon, that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, if they can put God first and they can surrender, like you said, they can surrender and know that, they need help. That's the first,
Well, one of the things is that there's more and more of awareness about what drugs is doing in our country. I mean, I don't know if there's a town that is not affected in America today.
Oh, right.
It used to be back when we grew up that it was, marijuana was the biggest thing in our school,
Oh, yeah.
And, but now, I mean, every single town, I believe, is
and
affected.
you say town. I would say almost every family is affected
Mhm.
by either a cousin or an uncle
Right.
or a brother or somebody. I would just almost go that far.
Right, and I think you're right. And I think with all of the awareness that's there now, to get them to a place like Eight Oaks that will care about them and appreciate them and love them. I mean, that's what we do there. I mean, the guys that come there that have been in other rehabs, the one thing that they say over and over is how much we care about them.
Right.
And there's worth in them. And because they come in there, they come into a rehab, and they're making that step, and they feel like they're nothing. They feel like they have just hit rock bottom, that there's no hope, that all life is over with, that I'm the dead dog on the side of the road. And that's the mentality. That's how they feel. So if we can make it where coming to a place like Eight Oaks is acceptable, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. That's where you're supposed to be, and that's where I can get my life changed around, and all the dreams that I used to have, I can have again, and I can have better dreams.
Yeah.
And I've seen
because there's going to be a place that cares about them.
I've seen it affect a lot of people now. It's changed a lot of lives, and I've seen Brandon. And I think Eight Oaks has a big part to do with him as well. I've seen the lives he's touched and the lives he's changed. Mm-hmm. And man, it just, it's a great feeling to sit back now. Now I feel like he probably took 20 years off my life because it's
I tell him all the time, like, the rest of your life's a vacation. Like, nothing should get to you from here on out. Right? You're just bulletproof. I'm gonna plug some Eight Oaks stuff. So last night we had Living Free, which is our intensive outpatient program at United Church. It's every Monday at 6:00. For anybody who wants to join us, we're going through Stepping Through Freedom, which is our 12-step Christ-centered recovery program. So it's like the AAs and NAs 12-step program, but it's completely Christ-centered.
Faith-based,
We truly believe that we are redeemed, we are set free, and we do live free indeed. That it isn't a struggle for the rest of our lives, that we can be overcomers. I'm no longer an addict, an alcoholic. I'm a child of God. I'm a business owner. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a son. I'm a uncle. I'm many, many things, but the world doesn't label me any longer. God does. So 8 Oaks, the guys that are there right now, it's super, super cool. If you're looking for someone or an environment that you just need to be loved on, you need positive encouragement, you need to be built up, strengthened, encouraged, made stronger, you need to be around positive, influential men of God. And so last night we're just going around the table like we always do, and we're introducing everybody. And so there's 3 or 4 new guys, and they all come from different rehabs. And every single one of them, one of the guys been to 4 or 5 rehabs in the past 2 years. He's like, man, I just gave up hope. I've never tried the God thing. And then I get to here, and it's like, man, these people are just different. It's like, you're an addict? Like, yeah, I've only been clean for 30 days. It's like, why are you so different? What's going on here? But every single one of those guys just could not brag enough about how positive 8 Oaks is, about how good these guys are. And I'm not talking about just like Mike, pastoral counselor, who's there all the time, interacting with the guys constantly. I'm with them on Monday nights. I'm not talking about me and Mike. I'm not talking about the clinical director. I'm not talking about anybody else. I'm talking about the actual guys that's going through this program are so positive. Wow. And that's something you don't see. I've been to a lot of rehabs. I've been a part of a lot of rehabs. I've gone through a lot of rehabs. I've visited a lot of rehabs, and not many positive things are going on. There's people constantly being taken away. There's people fighting with this. There's people doing this. It's always somebody trying to get over on somebody. Somebody's brought drugs in. 8 Oaks just ain't like that.
Right.
8 Oaks is different, where you can come, you can feel. We're so far out in the boondocks, people can't get drugs there if you've tried. You can't tell them how to get out there. Even
Couldn't find it.
No, you ain't gonna find it. It's just a different, and everybody who comes, especially people who are coming immediately from one rehab to 8 Oaks, all of them are talking about how great of a program, how positivity is such a big thing coming from addiction. You need to surround yourself with positive people, uplifting people. Oh, yeah. You know, you've told yourself constantly, over and over, for months to years, you'll never amount to anything, you're never good enough, you'll always be an addict, you'll always be this, you'll always be that. But you surround yourself with a group of like-minded men who are saying quite the opposite. Hey, bro, you're an overcomer. Like, you got this with God's help, with the Holy Spirit. Hey, can I share a Bible verse with you that'll help you through your struggles? You got these men of God surrounding you, doing what men of God are supposed to do.
That's right.
And it's so important that when you get to the point to where, man, I desperately need help. I hope it's 8 Oaks. I hope you choose to come to 8 Oaks. I hope you get to be a part of my life. I hope I get to speak into you and pour into you and love you like Jesus has loved me. But it's so important to find a faith-based program with men of God helping push, poke, jab, lead, guide, hold you accountable.
Yeah. And, I look back and think, boy, wouldn't it have been great years earlier if we'd have had 8 Oaks around when Brandon was needing help there, and we didn't know where to turn to. And so, wow, I mean, it just...
So 6 years ago, whenever I came back to Lawrenceburg, I got hooked up with David and United Church, and I wanted to be a part of the 8 Oaks vision. So me and my guys got to help build it and restore it and build the beds that they sleep on. And I was a very big part of getting it started. I have loved the 8 Oaks vision and Pastor David's vision from the very, very beginning. So even though I wasn't a participant, like 8 Oaks has, like Dad said earlier, in fact, helped change my life. And it gave me that promise of, like, dude, I remember praying over them beds and praying over that cabin, like, dear Lord, do what you have done in my life over and over again. Heal these guys, set these guys free. I mean, I prayed all over that cabin. No time, I couldn't quit praying, like, set people free, do it, Lord. So, like, it's done things in my life I wasn't a participant, I didn't go through it, but 8 Oaks is very much a reason of why I am who I am today, and I believe in it. I'm the vice chairman. I love the vision we have out there. I love where it's heading and where it's going. We're in the baby steps, but we're
I think 8 Oaks is definitely a special place, I believe. One of the proud moments that I had was when someone came to visit and had been spending some time with our guys and had been part of many other rehabs in the past. He was professionally into the rehab business. And he says, these guys love it here. they don't want to leave, and we got to kind of push them out sometime. And then the next thing he said, even when they relapse, they want to come back here.
Right.
So we have something special there, and I think it's the love of God. We treat them as human beings. We don't treat them as something else. And here's the thing that I've come to realize, or I've known it, but to be able to articulate it this way, that I look at those guys as sinners. And I stop there for a second because most of the time that's kind of a negative connotation. You're a sinner. But I think in the health profession and in the rehab profession, that is actually a compliment, because if you are a sinner, you got hope.
You can fix that.
If you're a sinner, there's restoration. If you're a sinner, you can be refreshed and restored. But if you're just a person who's got a disease, that's fixed.
Yeah.
Can't change that. You're always going to have that disease all your life. Once you got cancer, you always got cancer, kind of thing. But if you're a sinner,
That's right.
man, that's great.
I like that.
That's good, because now there's hope.
Right.
And I'm reminded of when I'm talking of Acts chapter 3, 19 and verse 21. It says, "And therefore repent and be converted, that your sins may be blotted out, and times of refreshing may come from the presence of the Lord." And then down in 21, it talks about being restored. So not only refreshing's good, but restoration's better.
That's right.
And that's what happens out here at 8 Oaks. I mean, that's what our prayer, and that's what we work towards, is that, yes, there is a time of refreshing. And a lot of times when you come, you get what they call the pink cloud. I got this, man. I'm good. I'm feeling good. And I remind the guys, hey, hold on, slow down a little bit. It takes a while to get your mind completely transformed.
Yeah.
So God is refreshing you right now, but there's not complete restoration. And when that moment's there, you'll know it. I'll know it. We'll all know it. We can all see it, and we'll all come together and agree on that, And because when you get restored, there is a complete change in your life, and that's what happened to you. And when you got refreshed and then you got restored, guess what? It restored your entire family.
Yeah.
I mean, it restored
That's for sure.
your mom, your dad, your sister, everybody that was connected with you in that family. Now, let me ask you this. We're almost at our closing here, but let me ask you this. What are Christmases like now?
Oh, wow.
End with that.
Thinking, back early that we would never have a Christmas like we have now. But, man, it's just so exciting because, Brandon has a great wife, she's just great. And the boys are great, and Mallory and the whole family. But when we come together now, it's just joy. Mm-hmm. It's just a time that we can kind of get together and just celebrate and, look so forward to just seeing them and knowing, you got that peace of mind that, he's not going to come out talking stuff that we don't even understand.
Some other language.
Yes.
The attic language.
But, man, it's just a joy. I mean, it's just hard to describe it. But we came through the rocky times, but it is just great now.
That's
Our family's doing, well, and so we're excited just to
We had to learn how to be a family all over again, and it's something that was through the Holy Spirit. We got to learn to love each other again. We got to learn who Brandon was again. So it doesn't just stop whenever you get sober. Like you gotta help them grow, and Dad and Mom did that. They helped me grow and figured out what I was good at and started my own business. And it's a cool process on that flip side of the coin, but it ain't over yet. It's still kind of difficult, It's still a chore.
So if you want to donate or you need some help, call 1-800-576-4396. We are so excited to be able to have anybody that needs help. We want to help you. So please make that call, 1-800-576-4396. And Lord, we just ask and pray that all those listeners out there tonight will be able to hear this prayer and be able to be changed and transformed by the renewing of their minds. In Jesus' name. Thank you, Lord.
Amen.
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 W287 AA and W237 FD Lawrenceburg. Broadcast services of Prospect Communications.